All right, so here we are back once again, live, about the left angle cross of dedication with the 6-2 profile. When you get to 6, you get to the funny business. Has nothing to do with anybody else. There's this wonderful line between the 5 and the 6. It's a wonderful line. The 6 looks at the 5 and says, how good for them. But then again, they don't care. It's not like they did. When the 6 looks at the 5, they think, look at what I've done. Look at what they have to put up. Look at all the people they have to deal with. Look at all the work they have to do. Look at all the step by step by step. Look at all this old way. Everything about 6 can be understood to the 12-6. It can go to the 12-6. You will see the metamorphosis of all these social processions, the metamorphosis in individuality. When you get to the 43-23 to the 6, what you're looking for is their breakthrough. Nobody else, no interest in, wow, I know, you have to know. They learn that very long. They learn it in the third line phase. One of the first things they hear in their life is, you don't know anything, as a response to what they're about. But it's about actualization and centering. Knowing is more important than any other aspect in our life. This is the whole thing. The whole thing is about knowing. It's just for the knowing. Remember our dilemma of mutation. The dilemma of mutation is that all of a sudden, when you get to the quart of mutation and you get to the 43, and you get to this yin sitting up there, pressing everything down, that the reality is that the ultimate structure itself, no matter how efficient they make it, it's still going to end. It doesn't matter how efficient. The sixth line understands that. And in understanding that, it's also understand something else. What if you're going to be yang? Knowing is more important than the body. Knowing is more important than the form. Knowing is more important than implementation. What the sixth line is really saying is that it's yang. If you're occupied, you won't notice that you're dying. This is one of the magical things in the formula. It says, look, what you do, what is look, it says what do we do with this young energy? We don't want to call us this young energy to get depressed. We all realize that there's only so much efficiency that you can put into the world, and it's difficult business anyway, so we might as well be busy. And for the 43, the sixth line, the dilemma for them is that they don't want to be busy. The ultimate hypocrisy, that they see that the only thing to do is to be busy. If you're busy, it's all okay, it's all go by, everything is all right, don't worry about it, and you get to the end so fast that you won't even have time to worry about it. At the same time, they can't do that. So it's a wonderful place for those that are going to examine the psyche of the collective consciousness field. Just examine it. These are the kinds of beings that simply get lost in knowing, and that they're freaky, obviously, for that very reason. There doesn't seem for them any application of their knowing to action. In other words, they're not a 5. The 5 says, I know it, you do, and I trick you into getting there. The 6 says, I know, you don't, fuck you, because it isn't going to make any difference if I tell you. As a matter of fact, if I tell you, you're going to look at me like a dumb cow, because you're not only going to understand the damn thing I'm saying, and when you say, I do what I mean, you're not going to go like, no, I don't. So the 6 says, I'm just going to know, and I'm going to watch off this roof, and I'm going to ice, and I'm going to look out there at the world and be very confident. The only problem is there's a spammer in all of this. And because we got a mutative life and the 6 has to come off the roof, the moment they come off the roof, they realize that was a mistake, not telling people about structure and efficiency. Because now I'm down here with them, and this is a really intense, messy place. So, unlike any of the other thing, 43s, they all try to work with the form principle. They're always trying to bring the structuring, the efficiency, the whenever. But the 6 is a fool on the hill. They create their own very, very closed off, private little efficiency and try to remain outside of the world. The 6-2 in particular. Oh, they're always trying to bring the structuring, the efficiency, the whenever. But the 6 is a fool on the hill. They create their own world. It just does. The moment it breaks down, they realize that, oh, it doesn't matter that I know what's sufficient. They don't know what's sufficient, and they have to be with it now. In that sense, they become very powerful examples despite themselves. But it's not easy for them physiologically, and not easy for them physically. Again, because they're 6, their very roof experience for them is determined by the level of problems that they met at the beginning of their process. It always goes back to the third line process. If they're not centered in the first 30 years, then they end up with ego problems, which means that they end up with heart, stomach, gallbladder, immune system, and other problems. In other words, there's unhealthiness. It's very important for them. This is early centering process. Also, their privacy needs to be nurtured. If you're dealing with a 6-2, which is the majority of the 6 line phenomenon, you really have to see that for them, the nurturing of their privacy is when they're young as something that's important for them. It's like a 6-2 on this cross should always have their own room so they can create their own inner efficiency world that they can structure their environment correctly for themselves. Despite the fact the rest of the house may be very different. You have one of these very, very basic houses with a very basic whatever, and you can go into the 6-2 kids' room. And the wildest place you can imagine by comparison. They get to things in the way in their environment. The 6-3, when we're dealing with the transition program, which means that we're dealing with the sixth color underneath the sixth line, and we're dealing with the first design color. So we're dealing with the potential for many, many problems rooted out of the ajna and the throat. Now, this is pituitary thyroid combination. One of the things to see very clearly about the 6-3 in this process is that the movement from relative stillness to activity that they face. In other words, what they're not willing to well equipped to be able to operate in a high activity environment, and yet that's the thing that is pulling them in that direction. And for 6-3s who are coming off the roof, and remember, a 6-3 experiments with many levels of up and down. When they're coming off the roof, this process of activity has to be graduated. These are the kinds of beings that will have a very kind of safe environment for 20 years, only to discover that they have to do many things that they have never thought they will have to do, and suddenly they have to do all these things because this is pressure of the roof pushing them towards this 14. My assumption is that the majority of the 6-3s on this course have very severe mental problems, mental institutions, addictive environments, and all of these kinds of things. It's a real challenge for them. Again, as we've seen, whenever we've been in these quarters, there's always certain configuration where the only blessing is the awareness of your parents. It was always my concern from the very beginning of my work. For so many, many beings, it's really late to get certain things. For some, it's easier. You can see that just by going through this course of configurations. You can see when it's easier and where it's not. But this is one of those situations where the quality of the process that one goes through when one is young is enormous determining factor in how healthy one can be in coming on the roof.